In long-term care facilities, most of the patients are given some form of antidepressant. But is this because they're depressed, or is it to make them less sensitive to their living conditions? Do we call it depression if they are correctly seeing that the world treats them as useless and forgotten? The experience of depression. Everyone has had a taste of what depression feels like. Sadness, disappointment, fatigue are normal parts of life. But the difference is like the difference between the sniffles and pneumonia. Almost half the American public views depression as a character defect rather than an illness or emotional disorder. We confuse depression, sadness, and grief. However, the opposite of depression is not happiness, but vitality, the ability to experience a full range of emotions, including happiness, excitement, but also sadness and grief. Depression is not an emotion itself. It's the loss of feelings, a big, heavy blanket that insulates you from the world, yet hurts at the same time. It's not sadness or grief. It's an illness. People with depression usually experience a lowered self-esteem and feel hopeless and blame themselves, which is not common with grief. In a depression, you may feel that you are a helpless victim of fate, the depressed life. The symptoms of depression are very painful and debilitating, but what makes recovery most difficult is the effect depression has on our world. Depression makes us see life differently. It changes how we think. It makes us feel inept and weak. It robs us of social skills and damages our relationships. It depletes us of all self-confidence. We think of ourselves as unable to live up to our own standards. We see the world as hostile or withholding, and we're pessimistic about things ever changing. We think of ourselves as unable to live up to our own standards. We see the world as hostile or withholding, and we're pessimistic about things ever changing. We're in the dark about human emotions. We don't know what it's like to feel normal. Our stories become so detailed and intertwined that we create a world of depression, of sadness and no hope. The thesis of this book is that we can repair and restore ourselves through learning new ways of thinking, feeling, and doing, self-constructive behavior. When we try these new skills, they will at first seem forced and artificial, but they can become a habit, part of ourselves, replacing our old ways of being with new skills. As we do this, our expectations and perceptions will change. We can go from thinking, I can't do anything right, to thinking, I'm as good as the next guy. Practice of any new skill through attending to ourselves in a mindful, non-critical way. Before we move on, however, let me explain what I mean when I refer to the skills of depression. Depressed people work harder at living than anyone else, although our efforts bring us little joy. But in the course of our hard work, we become very good at certain skills. We're like weightlifters who concentrate exclusively on upper body strength, resulting in massive muscles in the arms and trunk, but little spindly legs underneath, easy to knock down. People get good at depression. They over-adapt and develop skills that at best just keep them going and often make things worse. Many people who have had severe depression report that they suffered for years, sometimes for decades, before they told anyone. They felt so isolated and so self-blaming that they assumed there was nothing to be done, nothing that anyone else would understand. Meanwhile, they passed as normal. They went right ahead with life, putting on a happy face and achieving success in schools, in careers, in the family. This ability to maintain a false front is a primary skill of depression. Not everyone with depression is so good at fooling everyone so consistently, but we all try it every day. Of course, this just makes us feel even more alienated. Often the meaning of a suicide attempt, a breakdown, or a psychiatric hospitalization is, "Look, I can't keep up this charade. I feel terrible and I need help." It becomes a transforming experience, a clear message to the self and others that there's terrible distress below the appearance of competence and good cheer. We learn these skills of depression out of necessity. They served a purpose at one time, but they become stuck in our brains. They're part of the vicious circle that perpetuates the depression, and they make recovery difficult. The self-destructive element of many of these skills is obvious or will be explained shortly, so I'll just comment briefly on a few at this point, starting with depressed emotional skills. One is isolation of affect. Affect is simply another term for emotion. Isolation drives a wedge between the experience and the feeling. We're aware of what's happening around us, but we don't experience the emotion that we would expect to accompany the event.